Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us for this webinar called Careers in the Arts, Promoting Access, Equity, and Inclusion for People with Disabilities. My name is Beth Bienvenu, and I am the Director of Accessibility here at the National Endowment for the Arts. I'm excited to welcome you to this webinar, which is a kickoff for a series of 6 webinars that will provide tools and information for people with disabilities seeking careers in the arts, as well as for arts employers, arts educators, and arts funders. A quick note before we proceed. We will be describing any images on our slides. So this slide has a photo of me with medium-length brown hair, glasses, and a purple jacket. The webinars are part of a toolkit due to be launched later this year that will empower artists and other job seekers with disabilities to achieve career success in the arts, while educating arts employers, educators, and grant makers in the roles that they play in cultivating full inclusion. We are doing this work in partnership with Art Beyond Sight as part of a cooperative agreement, and we are looking forward to sharing this work with you. This slide has logos for the Arts Endowment and Art Beyond Sight. Our speakers today include Elizabeth Axel from Art Beyond Sight, who will give brief remarks. Then we will have Jennifer Sheehy, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Disability Employment Policy at the U.S. Department of Labor, who will provide a national perspective on working in the arts. Judith Smith, Founder and Director Emerita of Access Dance Company, will provide the perspective of an arts employer as well as a dancer and longtime disability advocate. And finally, Jaron Herman, who is a dancer, writer, and speaker, to give his perspective as a working artist. This webinar will run 60 minutes. First, some housekeeping. You can access the audio for this webinar via the web platform or by calling 877-685-5350 with the passcode 870335. Keep in mind there may be a delay with the slides if you are using the phone option. Captions are available by using the link provided on the screen. The audience is muted and will stay muted throughout the webinar. However, you can submit questions for our speakers using the question and answer window. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar, so be sure to add your questions to the mix. And help us continue the conversation. Throughout this webinar and afterward, please use social media. You can live tweet or tweet afterward using the hashtag #DisabilityArtsCareers. And this webinar will be archived with a transcript, so be sure to check that out later or refer it to folks who weren't able to catch it live. And I'd like to make a note about language. We recognize that there are multiple preferences for the terminology to use when referring to people with disabilities. Throughout these webinars, you will hear intentional uses of both person-first language and identity-first language. So before we dive in, I'd like to provide just a bit of background since this is the kickoff for a series of 6 webinars. The National Endowment for the Arts is a public agency dedicated to advancing artistic excellence, creativity, and innovation for individuals and communities. We award more than $115 million each year to arts organizations of all sizes across the country. And this slide has a photo from Deaf West Theater, their production of Spring Awakening, featuring a woman wearing a dress with 2 long braids. Her arms are raised and her hands are spread. She's on a darkened stage with people behind her. The Endowment's Office of Accessibility is the advocacy technical assistance arm of the Arts Endowment, helping make the arts accessible for people with disabilities, older adults, veterans, and people living in institutional settings. We were the 3rd federal agency and the first small agency to implement our regulations under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which requires federal grant recipients to be accessible. And since then, we have invested in projects to increase accessibility to the arts, to support inclusive programming, and to develop the field of disability arts. This slide features a woman with glasses playing a violin with a person behind her wearing a mask. We have also invested in promoting access to careers in the arts for people with disabilities. Some of these investments include national convenings in 1998 and 2009, and a series of statewide forums on careers in the arts for people with disabilities between 2002 and 2013, plus a roundtable on the future of deaf theater in 2015. These convenings led to policy changes and opportunities for disabled artists across the country. We have also supported, through our grants, physically integrated dance companies, deaf theater projects, and thousands of other projects that provide opportunities for artistic expression and jobs for artists with disabilities across the country. And more recently, we held dialogues in partnership with our partners at the U.S. Department of Labor to help determine our next steps for this support. What has been consistent throughout the decades of this work and these conversations that we've had is that people with disabilities experience numerous barriers to working in the arts, including lack of access to training and professional development, inaccessible workspaces, disability benefits limitations, and misconceptions about the talents that people with disabilities can bring to the arts. But there are so many benefits to working in the arts, including jobs in all areas of the arts and culture, including acting, visual art, photography, dance, design, set design, and also other supporting careers such as fundraising, marketing, ticket sales, and more. And there are many organizations and individuals that are working to help pave the way for employment in the arts for people with disabilities, as well as a number of tools and resources that can be tremendously helpful. So we wanted to develop a tool to help bring these resources together. We partnered with Art Beyond Sight and their partners to engage in a series of field scans and other research efforts to develop this toolkit. The main audiences for this project are people with disabilities seeking careers in the arts as artists, arts administrators, and other cultural workers, and arts educators in schools, universities, and community arts organizations to help ensure that they're including both youth and adults with disabilities in the arts career pipeline. We're targeting arts organizations that hire, produce, cast, and exhibit the work of people with disabilities to make the case for inclusion and to demonstrate the value to their organizations. And finally, arts funders, both public and private grant makers, to help make the case for supporting artists' opportunities for artists with disabilities and this vibrant field as a whole. The web toolkit will feature resources, best practices, and spotlight profiles of people with disabilities. We plan to launch the website later this year. So we're excited to kick off this project with our first webinar, and I'd like to pass it over to our partner on this project, Elizabeth Axel, who is President, CEO, and founder of Art Beyond Sight, where she has served as Principal Investigator for Development and Research Projects. She is part of the New York City disability community and has been active on a local and national level for over 30 years. She's a founding steering committee member of the Dance NYC Disability Task Force and is a board member and chair of entertainment for the New York City Disability Pride Parade and Festival. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Beth. The first slide is of myself. I am a white woman with brown hair, long brown hair, and brown eyes smiling in this photograph. And it reads Elizabeth Axel, President and Creative Director, Art Beyond Sight. There are two logos at the bottom, Art Beyond Sight and National Endowment for the Arts, as there have been on the previous slides. Art Beyond Sight and a collaborative of associate partners, reviewers, and contributors are all honored to work on this toolkit initiative with the staff at the National Endowment for the Arts. We thank you, Beth Danvino and Lauren Tizzolino, accessibility specialist at the Arts Endowment. We hope the toolkit and accompanying webinars will achieve the endowment's vision to support careers in the arts for people with disabilities. A little bit about Art Beyond Sight. For over 30 years, Art Beyond Sight, also known as ABS, has been a leading voice and clearinghouse for best practices on accessibility and multisensory learning through the arts. We inspire and provide resources across the cultural sector for the full integration of people with disabilities through direct service, thought leadership, knowledge sharing, product development, and dissemination of special projects. We empower disabled people to be active, creative, and powerful participants and contributors in all areas of the arts and cultural arena, as well as society at large. As a catalyst for equitable change, we foster collaboration and exploration of innovative, effective, and impactful solutions to realize full inclusion. ABS's approach to problem solving is to always take a 360-degree holistic view. The toolkit is an example of this approach. We have pulled together existing information as well as new information from colleagues in an easily usable toolkit helpful to educators, funders, people with disabilities, and employers. And we see this project as a beginning, not an end. As educators and teaching artists focus on the pipeline to move forward disability employment and in the arts, and as disability inclusive employment becomes the new normal in arts industries and cultural organizations, we are sure that solutions to barriers will be developed. These webinars can be a jumping off point for discussion in your own community. We hope you will reach out to colleagues and ask your local museum, concert hall, or art school to hold a community watch party and view and discuss this webinar, which will be archived on the Arts Endowment site. Implement these learnings and your own community ideas. Include disabled people in your community, your city's mayor's office for people with disabilities, your city's Department for Cultural Affairs, educators and teaching artists, local arts organizations, and local funders. By taking a 360-degree approach, working together, and including disability in diversity, local communities can arrive at next year's 2020 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, having moved disability employment in the arts forward. As Lawrence Carter Long, Communications Director, Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund says, quote, "Here's how to remember it. Disability is the, quote, D in diversity, not as an afterthought, not something you say when people begin to protest because they were forgotten, but rather right there at the front of the word. As you reach out to stakeholders, do so with an intersectional lens and work with new friends and colleagues from arts industries, cultural organizations, funders, and with city and state and federal officials, and together embrace inclusive community engagement and employment. We hope you enjoy this webinar and the other ones to come. Spread the word, hashtag Disability Arts Careers. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was great, and we've so enjoyed working with Art Beyond Sight on this project and look forward to the rest of the webinar series and launching our toolkit. So before I introduce our next speaker, I would like to just offer a personal note that before I came to the Arts Endowment 9 years ago, I worked as a policy advisor at the Office of Disability Employment Policy at the U.S. Department of Labor, where I educated employers about the talents and benefits that people with disabilities bring to the workplace. This perspective helped inform my work at the Arts Endowment and drove me to develop this project. And so I'm pleased to partner with the Office of Disability Employment Policy on this project. So I invite Jennifer Sheehy to join us to provide an overview of the disability employment perspective on this work. Jennifer is the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Office of Disability Employment Policy at the U.S. Department of Labor here in Washington, D.C. Prior to her current position, Jennifer spent 10 years at the U.S. Department of Education as Acting Director of the National Institute on Disability and Rehabilitation Research, as Acting Deputy Commissioner of the Rehabilitation Services Administration, and Special Assistant to the Assistant Secretary of the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services. We welcome her valuable perspective to this webinar. And so, Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Beth. And we miss you here, but we're thrilled that we get to work with you at the National Endowment of the Arts. It's been a great partnership, and we are honored to be included in the webinar today to talk about these wonderful artists that are going to follow me and your amazing toolkit and new partnership with Art Beyond Sight to create it. So next slide, please. As Beth mentioned, I have the pleasure of leading the Office of Disability Employment Policy, or ODEP as we refer to it, which is part of the U.S. Department of Labor. As our name suggests, we are all about employment. Our mission is to develop and influence policies and practices that increase the number and quality of employment opportunities for people with disabilities. So we are very excited about this webinar series and by the National Endowment of the Arts work around disability arts employment in general. As Beth mentioned, ODEP co-hosted the 2 national online dialogues that helped inspire the National Endowment of the Arts soon-to-be launched online toolkit on disability inclusion in the arts. Those dialogues were insightful and informative opportunities for all of us to learn about the arts-related employment barriers faced by people with disabilities, as well as ways to tackle those barriers. So it's great to see that the National Endowment of the Arts and Art Beyond site are channeling all that feedback into real, tangible tools that have practical advice and guidance and activities designed to promote access and inclusion for people with disabilities in arts careers. So I personally don't know one person in the arts who became an artist or entered the arts because they were forced into it, because they didn't have any other options. I know artists and those in the arts industry follow their dreams. But Mitch Hedberg, who is a comedian, said this about following your dreams. He said, "I'm sick of following my dreams. I just want them to tell me where they're going, and I'll hook up with them later." I say that because we know how difficult it is to follow a path of your passion, and we want to help you get there. People with disabilities do have some barriers, additional barriers that they have to face, but there are more tools than ever now, including technology, policies, and wonderful partnerships and toolkits like the one we're going to talk about today that will help make those dreams more achievable. And we're delighted to have a part in that. We have seen a huge demand by employers looking for people with disabilities, and that includes in the arts as well. Smart employers everywhere are learning that organizations that are inclusive of people with disabilities, including veterans with disabilities, benefit from a wider pool of talent, skills, and creative problem solvers. And they're recognizing that disability diversity is an important way to tap into the growing market, since people with disabilities represent the 3rd largest market segment in the U.S. So by proactively employing people with disabilities, businesses gain a better understanding of how to meet the needs of this important and expanding customer base. And it can be a very rewarding career path. Next, you've got that slide already. Thank you. So let me tell you a little bit about arts and the economy. I'm just going to talk about a couple of stats here. Arts and culture jobs represent a very viable and growing career path opportunity for people both with and without disabilities, and there's data that tells us this. According to research on the economic impact of the arts from the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis and the National Endowment of the Arts contributed $763.6 billion to the U.S. economy in 2015, 4.2% of GDP, and that represents 4.9 million workers who earned $372 billion in total compensation. The arts added 4 times more to the U.S. economy than the agricultural sector and $200 billion more than the transportation or warehousing sector. And the arts trended positively between 2012 and 2015 with an average growth rate of 2.6%. That's slightly higher than the 2.4% for the nation's overall economy. Next slide. So this slide lists several art occupations and the percent of those occupations that is people with disabilities. And I'm not going to read all these off, but this is an accessible slide that will be up on the National Endowment of the Arts website, I believe, and we can get that to you. But let me give you a couple of interesting statistics. So of the editors in the arts, design, entertainment, sports, and media occupations, only 4.72% of those are people with self-identified disabilities, whereas musicians, singers, and related workers, of those 7% are people with disabilities, and actors, 4.32% are people with disabilities, artists and related workers, 6.74% are people with disabilities. So next slide, please. So how do we ensure an inclusive arts workforce? If people with disabilities want to work in the arts, and the arts are a growing and viable career option, what can we do to advance people with disabilities in the arts? The answer is multifaceted because multiple stakeholders have a role to play in moving the needle. And as Elizabeth mentioned, for example, arts employers and cultural organizations should understand why disability inclusion can benefit the arts and how to ensure that their institution is disability inclusive and takes advantage of those creative minds and diverse perspectives that people with disabilities bring to the arts. Arts educators need to better prepare students with disabilities for careers in the arts and understand how easy it is to provide accommodations so that those students can be very successful. Arts grant makers should practice equitable philanthropy, building access and inclusion into the fabric of their grant making and not thinking of it as a separate thing. And of course, job seekers and aspiring artists with disabilities can sometimes need assistance learning about and pursuing a job in the arts. As young people, they should be connected early with arts mentors, arts experience, and career preparation opportunity. And when job hunting, they may need tips on securing a job in the arts as well as information on job accommodations to ensure their success. And that's why the toolkit that National Endowment of the Arts is launching is going to be so beneficial. Both will dive into the practices I just mentioned, along with the webinar series. So I'm going to tell you about two resources that we have in the Office of Disability Employment Policy that can be helpful to art employers, art organizations, job seekers, arts grant makers, and educators. Next slide, please. The first is our Job Accommodation Network. We call this resource affectionately JAN. We're very proud that JAN offers free confidential guidance on workplace accommodations to employers and employees. This is a picture on the screen of the JAN website homepage, which can be accessed at askjan.org. Another resource is the Employer Assistance Resource Network on Disability Inclusion. Next slide, please. And we call this EARN for short. And EARN helps organizations recruit, hire, retain, and advance people with disabilities and build a culture of workplace inclusion. Its website is askearn.org. You'll be hearing more about both JAN and EARN and other resources on future webinars and once the toolkit launches. They're key tools in our work with employers and in all industries. As I mentioned, there's so much overlap between our mission and the work that the National Endowment of the Arts and Art Beyond Sight are doing to advance the career success of people with disabilities in the arts. I find it personally rewarding to see that we share tools and leverage synergies in such tangible and productive ways. But beyond tools, resources, and best practices are the people, the numerous people with disabilities who are contributing their talents, skills, creativity, and always passion to the arts community as artists, performers, cultural workers, administrators, creative directors, teachers, and more. They're bringing their craft and creative expression to the masses and enriching all of us in the process and really making our lives more colorful. We're about to hear from two of those remarkable art professionals right now. So at this point, I'd like to thank you for your time and turn things back over to our fantastic moderator, Beth, who will introduce you to Judith and Jared.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was wonderful. I love the fact that we're working together on this. In 2009, when I was at ODEP, the National Endowment for the Arts held their summit on careers in the arts for people with disabilities, and I was one of the speakers, and the Assistant Secretary of ODEP, Kathy Martinez, was one of the speakers, and that was right before I came on board here. So I just feel like we're coming full circle and bringing these two agencies together to produce this wonderful resource that we're so excited to share. So we really value this partnership. So I just want to just do a couple of housekeeping reminders. First, I want to remind you that there is about a 10 to 12 second delay between the speaker and the slides, so just be patient. This is just a factor with the webinar software that we're working out. And then if you're having problems with the phone connection, try to listen through your speakers on your computer, and that might be better synced. And then don't forget to put in your questions. And then also we will be sending out this PowerPoint presentation after the fact, and it will be archived. So we can any links that we're mentioning should be available in the PDF when we send it out. So, all right, we are on schedule, and we're excited to keep going. We want to bring in our two artists to talk about their work. So I'd like to introduce Judith Smith to talk about her experience as an artist and also an arts employer. As the founder and director emerita of Access Dance Company, I want to make sure I change the slide to a photo, of Access Dance Company in Oakland, California, Judith is one of the nation's driving forces in physically integrated dance. Under her direction, Access commissioned works from the nation's best choreographers and composers and developed one of the field's most extensive integrated dance education and outreach programs. Her advocacy work led to the first ever national convening on the future of physically integrated dance in the United States. She has received an Isadora Duncan Dance Award for Sustained Achievement and was honored as one of the Theater Bay Area's 40 people that have changed the face of Bay Area theater. So I'll turn it over to Judith.
Great, thank you, Beth. And I want to also thank the Endowment and Arts Beyond Sight. The slide that is up is a photo of myself. I have long, light-colored hair, and I'm with another dancer who has dark hair, and she is actually standing on the back of my wheelchair, my power wheelchair. My arm is extended, and she is holding on to my arm. And that is an Access Dance Company photo. And I want to start this by saying I did not expect to be a dancer or to have a dance career. My plan was actually to be an equestrian. That was my plan A. And I was injured in a car accident and had really no plan B. So dance is actually the last thing I ever would have imagined myself making a career of. But dance is ultimately the thing that both changed my life and gave me a purpose and a direction when I had none. I actually was injured when I was 17. I had the good fortune to move to Berkeley, California when I was 23, and I met somebody and started doing improvisational movement just as a way to explore how my body could work again. And that led me into martial arts, where I met Access Dance Company's first director, Thais Mazer. And, you know, the rest is a little bit of history. I didn't start dancing until I was 23. We started Access in 1987. And as you might know, that was way before the internet. So, you know, we didn't have any way to, we really had to make it up as we were going along. We didn't know anyone else that was doing this kind of work, actually setting choreography that included people with disabilities. And we, and for me as a disabled dancer, you know, my job training was on the job. My dance training came as a dancer with access. There was really not much to access to community classes back then, and unfortunately there still isn't. And the more disabled, quote, you know, the more disabled you are, the harder it is to integrate into community classes still. And I got really, really interested in dance, in how to advance access and how I, as a disabled person, could involve myself in a dance career. And I educated myself really by going to every single performance I could go to, by attending organizational development workshops, by reading dance magazines, and by learning about the field. Who were the presenters? Who were the choreographers? You know, who were the dancers around? And I want to give a little bit of historical context here, because I think it's really important to realize that integrated dance worldwide is still a relatively young dance form. In the 1970s, wheelchair ballroom started primarily in Europe, but dance that included people with disabilities really didn't come into being much until the mid and late 80s. And it kind of started with contact improvisation, and that was my entry point. And, you know, there were quite a few people that I knew around the Bay Area doing contact improv with an integrated, in an integrated setting. But we didn't, when we started Access, we didn't know any other companies that were actually setting choreography. So, you know, as I said, we had to kind of make it up as we went along. And because there wasn't the internet, we didn't start to find out about other companies until a few years into our existence. And we had a dancer from Germany join us who told us about a company there. We got in touch with that company and went to Germany and worked, and found out that there was actually a company happening in Israel. And then, you know, gradually I found out about Mary Verdi Fletcher and Dancing Wheels through a newspaper article. And, you know, a few years in, we're realizing that this form of dance is popping up all over the world. And I really feel like it was kind of a convergence of what was happening in dance. We were coming out of the postmodern Judson Church era, where people were looking at dance in a more pedestrian manner, trying to take it off the theater stage and put it in, you know, other venues. And so there was a lot of innovation going on. And at the same time, we were about a decade into the civil rights and independent living movement for people with disabilities. So I think those two things came together, especially here in the Bay Area, where I am in Oakland, California, to really make a climate that was supportive of having disabled dancers. And we had the really good fortune to get connected with a presenter, Jeremy Allager, in Boston at Dance Umbrella. And he got very interested in integrated dance and I helped curate an international festival in 1997. We actually brought 12 companies from around the world, and this was, you know, not too long after the internet got up and going, and it was about the first time really that internationally any companies had met. And that was really kind of eye-opening, because there were companies that were focusing on improvisation, companies that were working more off of ballet vocabulary, companies that were really looking towards commissioning contemporary choreographers. And that really sparked an interest in me in how I could position Axis to be an important integrated company on the map of contemporary dance and disability culture. And also the other thing was that, again, as a disabled dancer not having access to much training, I really realized that the way that we were going to get influence outside of our own company, we created all of our work internally the first 10 years, was to bring choreographers and dance educators to us. And that was a really, really wonderful strategy for Axis on a lot of different levels, because we did get to work with many different choreographers. We got a name in contemporary dance, and, you know, early on, critics didn't know how to review this work. We got a lot of sympathy reviews, but once we started working with well-known choreographers like Bill T. Jones and Joe Good, even Petronio, all of a sudden reviewers had a way to talk about the work we were doing in the context of what they knew about those choreographers' work. So, you know, as I said, I really wanted to position Axis to be an important company in the field of contemporary dance. And what I really realized early on also was that if the field was going to have trained dancers, it was on the companies like Axis to do the education, because it was not available. So Axis has done education from the very beginning, starting with a monthly dance jam, you know, which led into weekly classes, and now education and outreach is about 50% of what Axis does. I had also really gotten an education on how hard it was, especially in the first 10 or 15 years, to convince the field, presenters, funders, service organizations that this was a viable art form, that integrated dance was a dance form and not just therapy. So advocacy has been an important part of my trajectory as a dancer and an administrator. I took over leadership of Axis in 1997, and about 15 years in, realized that, you know, other than the International Festival at Dance Umbrella in Boston in 97, the field had not gotten together, and that we were not as far along as, for instance, the disability arts platforms in the United Kingdom were. So I set about raising money and presenting the first ever national convening on integrated dance. And I'm excited to say that I think that there's more momentum has been generated in the last 3 or 4 years, both through the work that Dance NYC has done in their disability dance artistry, and the work that Axis has done to organize the field. Dance USA has come on board really, and we now have a dance and disability affinity group through Dance USA. So, you know, I've had kind of a wild ride, and, you know, I started as a dancer, ended up doing administration as a program director. I ended up being an arts educator and, you know, an artistic director. So what I thought I was getting into, just because I had a passion for movement and a passion for this art form, ended up being a pretty long career. We can go to the next slide. And it's a careers in dance, and this is a photo of 4 Axis Dance Company dancers in front of a large mural, wall-sized mural. There is a dancer in a wheelchair, 2 dancers who are missing their left arm, and 1 non-disabled dancer. And let's go to the next slide. The exciting thing about dance is that there are many possibilities for your career. You can be a dancer. You could be a rehearsal director. You could do what I did and work your way up to being an artistic director and choreographers. So next slide. Careers in arts education. And this is a photo of gymnasium full of elementary school kids looking at a dancer who is standing in a blue shirt with his hands on his head next to a dancer in a yellow shirt who's sitting in a wheelchair, also with his hands up in the air. Next slide. Careers in arts education. You can be a teaching artist with a dance company or an arts education organization. You could work in schools, at a studio, in the community, and then you can work your way into being a program coordinator, a community engagement manager, who is somebody who helps set up programs in inclusive dance at other organizations. The exciting thing about careers in the arts is that you can either, join a company or you can be a freelance artist. So there's a lot of flexibility. Next slide. Careers in arts administration, and this is a photo of 4 people, an Asian woman in a blue dress sitting with her legs crossed, another Asian woman in a black dress, myself, a white woman with light-colored hair, sitting in a wheelchair, and we're facing a choreographer named Joe Good sitting in a chair. And this was at an event, an open rehearsal. Next slide. Careers in the arts, you can start as an intern and really basic administrative assistant type positions, entry-level positions that can go into a development and a fundraising emphasis, a finance emphasis, a marketing emphasis, and ultimately you can work as a consultant in whichever area you end up developing the best expertise. Next slide. Careers in design for the performing arts. Next slide. Composer and sound design, costume design, set design, dramaturge. So there are just so many options for careers here. And it's been a really, really wild and exciting ride for me. And I will say that it's not a career for the meek or the faint of heart. It takes a lot of hard work. But if you have the passion and the drive, you can figure out how to make it happen. Next slide. I've listed some national resources, some information about the national and regional convenings that Access Dance Company did, the report that was published, Dance NYC's Disability Dance Artistry Program, and Dance USC's Dance and Disability Affinity Group. Next slide. And I also wanted to put in some international resources. I mentioned very briefly that the United Kingdom is way ahead of us in terms of really weaving disability arts into their cultural platforms. There's not enough disabled people and deaf people working in the arts at any level, and we really need to change this, because one of my biggest barriers as an artistic director, and one that other companies face, is a complete shortage of disabled and deaf dancers, teaching artists, and administrators. And we would really like to continue to work to remedy that situation. Next slide. This is my contact information. I am professionally interruptible. I'm kind of known for answering every email I get, and if you have any questions or need resources, I'm available. And I'm going to turn it back over to Beth.
Great. Thank you so much, Judith. That was a wonderful presentation, a really good overview of the field and how physically integrated dance fit in, and also your career. It was wonderful. We have about 15 minutes left to cover our last speaker, and if we don't have time to do the question and answer, we have those questions that you've been sending in, and we can answer them individually, and we'll reach out to you. So feel free to continue to submit your questions. So our final speaker, last but not least, Jaron Herman. He's an interdisciplinary artist. Oops, I will forward the slides. Oh, before I continue, I also want to mention Judith had some links. We will send out the PowerPoint, and those links will be available to you if you missed them. So, final speaker, Jaron Herman, is an interdisciplinary artist creating through dance, text, and visual storytelling. He's based in New York City. He studied dramatic writing at the Tisch School of the Arts at New York University, and then media culture and the arts with an emphasis in art history and playwriting at the King's College. He is a key member of Heidi Lasky Dance Company and has performed at such venues as Lincoln Center and the Whitney Museum of Art. He's a strong advocate for disabled athletes and performers and has been a featured model for both Tommy Hilfiger and Nike. As a writer, Jaron was a finalist for the inaugural Lark Play Development Lab and Apothete Playwriting Fellowship, and he was recently nominated for the prestigious United States Artist Fellowship in Dance. Welcome, Jaron.
Hello, thank you so much, Beth. Yes, so I really was intending to give our participants and audience members just a portrait of, or a profile of what I think is is commensurate with individuals who are independent artists today. The first slide is a photo of me. It's a still from my Great Big Story video that's online, which I was very grateful to have been profiled via. I'm a Black male with often a bushy beard and black hair. In the picture, I'm in a side arabesque in all red. Next slide, please. So I'm a disabled dancer interested in different methods of art expression. In addition to art practice, I love to discover critical connections between disparate ideas to highlight their commonality in text and artistic productions. This slide in front of you details some of my accomplishments thus far. They largely represent my time with Heidi Lasky Dance. I began with the company in 2011, 2012, and was fortunate enough to first perform at Lincoln Center out of doors. No big deal. My time in the company has allowed me to connect with other aspects of disability in the arts across disciplines to expand my own voice. Just recently, I've been able to write academic commentary and hope to continue that. Also, my recent experiences in theater are so dear to me as they bridge my first love of playwriting with my burgeoning awareness of disability genius. I was honored to adjudicate, for example, the VSA Playwright Discovery Award for Disabled Teens, which was a program I submitted my first play to when I was in high school before I applied and was accepted to Tisch a year later. Next slide, please. This outlines my personal objectives, and the objectives outline my critical framework for professionalism. They're beautifully alliterative, too. Individuality, interdisciplinary, and interact, just a few of them. Next slide, please. Individuality for me is really based in this idea that I was born after the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I was born in 1991, and from there, my experience with structural discrimination is abated and largely unfounded. I mean, of course, I do experience social aspects of discrimination, and certainly do have to still bridge misunderstanding with understanding of disability in my daily life. But in terms of access to buildings and access to the things that I desire for my profession, those are products of the great work that the ADA still brings, though we still have many needs and many changes that should happen. I still think that the first wholesale passing of the ADA has given me privileges that I approach every day in my practice. This is most expressed, I think, via the presence of ADA regulations within school syllabi that I experienced as a kid, and also in the Bay Area. Shout out to the Bay Area. The last paragraph of every syllabi, you know that one. This helped build my conception of advocacy via presence and not an explicit activism as we know it. Activism meaning the protest culture and investing solely in performative, presentational advocacy or activism. Also, I, through individuality, have tried to express and think about an emphasis of inserting myself into integrated environments, and feel that my conceit of individuality also helps me to do that. But because of individuality and its various connotations, I now approach disability with a joint conceit that as I profile my independent aesthetic and outlook as a disabled person, I also want to internalize the historical ideas of disability and reference them to ensure that my environments strengthen their awareness of disability. I'm more interested in fusing the historical and new ideas of disability that can touch on intersectional realities like race and gender that do now come out explicitly in my work, both as a dancer and as a writer. Next slide, please. Interdisciplinary work, or the idea of being interdisciplinary, has this kind of feckless connotation that if you are multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary, that you are a jack of all trades and master of none. And I really want to interrogate that, because I do believe that because of the lack of representation that people with disabilities have and the limited space we have to express ourselves, we must take as much ground as possible. So I found that I actually share the adoption of different forms with many other artists with disabilities, and that my facility for multiple forms might seem like a fluke, but it's actually a direct output of my life in disability culture and my life with disability. And that I've recently encountered other disabled folks who entertain many forms at the same time. Like as Beth mentioned, I began as a playwright in theater to give language to the disability experience, and then I became a dancer to unapologetically profile the physical body. I found it such an amazing opportunity to say to the industry, give me a chance to show what hemiplegia cerebral palsy looks like. Give me a chance to show what a spasm looks like, and profile it as beautiful. Now even other modes of expression that I'm experiencing are modeling. And that is also such an unabashed practice, because it's saying to the body almost that, even more so than dance, that all you need is your body to tell a story. And so that has paid enormous dividends in my conceit of myself and my own advocacy for the places that I believe I deserve to be in. Next slide, please. What you see are 3 pictures of projects that I've been a part of. On the far left is the promo shot of the Nike-sponsored project that I consulted on. I'm looking in profile wearing a form-fitted sweater and black pants. The middle shot is an illustration by Ryan Hartley Smith that was a collaborative project with Smith, myself, and Amplified Justice, which sought to colorfully and depict tenets of social justice in our world, gun control, education, disability, and this is our interpretation. The figure is a colorfully looping body holding a cane, and I am the muse and the idea behind this image. And it was a wonderfully different experience to have. And then the far right is me on a photo shoot in a pose in front of a green background. And this is illustrative of my work with different photographers. And it also precedes what I'm going to talk about next in this next slide, please. Collaboration has been a dynamic impulse for my creativity, and the 2 tenets I collaborate with are people and industries in this next slide, expressing the distinct principles with each. For example, collaborating with photographers or choreographers is about sharing the roles of expert and learner, and then I can co-create or facilitate a symbiotic relationship with the person who is quote-unquote in power or not. Because I believe I'm in as much power as the person I'm collaborating with. Collaborating with industries also offers me the chance to provide insight via my own experience While I'm not an exhaustive example of a disabled person, I believe my presence can further the conversation on disability. I believe the responsibility of collaborating with industries demands the subject, me, for example, to both stand as a proxy while standing as an individual. Often, change can come more quickly via relationships, and that's really important and key to me, that I've experienced this innumerable times where the intention of an industry or a corporation or an organization is illuminated based off of my encounter with them, whereas otherwise they would have been oblivious to the intentions and the outpouring of their work. I stand as a proxy, as I said. That within industries, your engagement of me will produce at the least a new anecdote of disability that deepens our awareness of the community. And I look forward to finding new entities to collaborate with. The last slide, please. These are logos of some of the collaborations that I really cherish. As I've mentioned before, the top left is a logo of the Lark Theater in New York City, the Lark Development Play Development Lab, and it represents the beautiful residency co-organized by the Apatite, Greg Mosgala, artistic director, who set out to create a residency for a disabled writer that I had the extreme pleasure of becoming a finalist for. Of course, the swoosh logo of Nike to represent my experience with one of their sponsored projects. SY Partners, or SYP as you see, which is a creative agency that was one of the mentor companies for WITH, which is disabled activist Liz Jackson's employment and collaboration program that partners disabled folk, designers, and artists and thinkers with creative agencies and other entities for semester-long mentor collaborations where the disabled person activates a project that is pressing for them at that agency or that corporation. And then Tommy Hilfiger, which was, I also had the extreme pleasure of being a part of their adaptive campaign. And then the Kennedy Center's VSA logo, where I adjudicated, like I said, the Playwright Discovery Award for disabled teens. This is a small example of the places that I've been able to intersect with, and that I believe offer other entities and organizations really nice templates of how to engage with disabled folk. And the last slide just ends with my where you can get in touch with me. I am a millennial, so I am very active on Instagram and now Twitter. And then please visit my website, JeronHerman.com, for more. And if you would like to get in contact with me, my email is also available. I'll return it to Beth. Thank you so much for allowing me to give this portrait and profile of a disabled artist.
Thank you, Jeron. That was wonderful. You were doing such amazing work across disciplines and, going in depth within each one of them. And we look forward to seeing more from you in the years to come. And you've been a great partner, as have all of you on the webinar. We really appreciate all of your insights. We have just 2 minutes left. We're going to actually go over for a few minutes to just answer a couple of questions. And I'd like to throw it back to Jeron and ask, so how did you go about finding support for working in the arts financially or otherwise? What other strategies did you use?
Yeah, so my financial independence largely came from my occupation as a dancer with Heidi Lasky Dance. It provided me the resource through our performing calendar and schedule to support myself financially. That expanded in as I attached another role of development director with the company as well. And with those dual roles, I made a living wage. But in tandem, the my experience with Greg Muscala's residency through the LARC, as well as I was a commissioned artist when Alice Shepard was asked by Give Me Dance Center to curate to artists. And those two programs specifically really ameliorated my experience to be a full-fledged dance person. So I like to say that I really it was dual finding resource and also being invited into to accept resource. But I'm a big proponent of finding residencies and finding just Googling what is out there and applying and being really unapologetic about that. So.
Great, and that's a great example of a lot of artists, in addition to their artistic practice, also take on roles in arts administration and management of the organizations that they're working with. So that's one of the solutions. And the arts administration degree programs are often filled with former music and art majors and dance majors who decide that they want to go into administration. So I'd like to throw a different question to Judy. Since you've worked more on the institutional level, what recommendations would you have to make art institution boards and leadership more inclusive? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think the very, very first thing that needs to happen is that organizations have got to do a 360-degree review of what their accessibility really is. I have been serving on grants panels since I retired, and I am just shocked at how few organizations collect any information about disability demographics, how many even mention accessibility or any kind of accommodations in their proposals. So, the first thing you have to do is look at yourself as an organization and saying, what are we doing? And then I think the next thing to do is, bring disabled people in to do trainings with your staff, your board, and your volunteers about Disability 101. And, if you're not familiar with disability and you don't have any, lived experience, then you need to go to the source. And I think that that's probably the most important thing that you can do is to involve people with disabilities in shaping any kind of diversity, equity, inclusion platform that you would have that would involve, disability. But I think it's really, really important to look at your entire organization and, from just basic, is the building accessible to, what are our policies around disability inclusion?
That's really important, and it was great to get your perspective on that. That's something that all arts organizations need to be aware of. And I know that anyone who's on this webinar is we're preaching to the choir, but these are lessons that you can take to your colleagues in the field. And I guess one other question I wanted to ask of Judith was, do you have any other advice for people just starting out about finding support or otherwise in working in the arts?
Yeah, you have to be super creative and you have to be really driven, I think. If you're wanting to pursue a career in dance, I think the most important thing for you to do is start finding ways to actually dance and to get training. Start by even working with friends, by going to summer intensive like Access and Full Radius and Dancing Wheels have. Look at ways to learn about the field. And you guys are so lucky because you all have the internet, and we have the internet now. But for those of us in the first generation, and I would say we're kind of in the early third generation in physically integrated dance now, we didn't have access to those kind of resources. But it's really important to connect with people who are already doing it, and find mentors. Find mentors and people that can help guide you.
Wonderful. That's really important. Mentoring is always a key to this, and finding people that can help you along. And you've been a wonderful mentor to people in the field, and Duran and Jennifer as well. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We don't want to take up the rest of everyone's afternoon. So we want to thank all of you for your time, for joining us. And so we will be answering any of those questions that we did not get to. We will reach out because we have the email addresses of those who asked, and we will follow up with you individually. Also, this webinar will be archived in the next week so that it'll be available. And so just a word about our plans for the rest of this project. This toolkit, we're hoping to launch it later this fall. We've had a few questions about the date, but these things can never be determined exactly. So we hope to get it out sometime in the fall. And this webinar series will continue throughout the rest of the year. We have one planned for June 19 at 3 p.m. that will be targeted at individuals with disabilities seeking careers in the arts, providing some of the tools and resources for navigating a career in the arts. We will follow that up with one in July for arts educators, one in September for individuals seeking careers in the arts, and then followed by another one for arts organizations in October, and for funders in November. So all of those dates are to be determined, and we will announce them. We will send out the information to everyone who has participated in this webinar. So we'll let you know, and we're very excited about this. We're thrilled that you'd all joined us, and I'd like to thank our speakers once again and encourage you to reach out to us. The contact information for Art Beyond Sight and the Office of Accessibility at the Arts Endowment are on your screen, and we will also provide that information in our email outreach to you. So thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to talking with you in our next webinar. Thank you.